Hello, friends, and welcome into Denver Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. I am Tom Downey here with some trade rumors around the Broncos, specifically quarterbacks. Let's begin with the one most connected to Denver. That's Aaron Rodgers, the, at least for now, Green Bay Packers franchise and starting quarterback. A report from Pro Football Talk, and we'll go more in depth on this in a second, is that the Broncos are leery. They're concerned about the trade cost of Aaron Rodgers. Not only would he demand, and the Packers would demand, significant trade value back, he would also be expensive in terms of the contract cost, allegedly. 2 years, $45 million per year, fully guaranteed. That could be a potential issue. I'll also make note that right before we started filming this, Ian Rappaport reports that Rodgers has told people close to him he plans to play for the Packers this year. We, of course, will also come back to that in just a second. But first, more on the Pro Football Talk side of things, with the alleged Rodgers wish list of where he wants to play this year, which would, of course, fly in the face of the Ian Rappaport report. Namely, the Niners, who do not make sense because of the presence of Trey Lance, the number 3 overall pick in this past year's NFL draft, the heavily linked Denver Broncos, and also the Las Vegas Raiders. Denver has been the team most consistently connected to Rodgers, and the team that I think, if and when Rodgers does get dealt, makes the most sense as a destination. Now, again, this was the alleged ask for Green Bay. What Pro Football Talk suggested could be the value going back to Green Bay. 3 first-round picks and a second-round pick. Now, I get that Aaron Rodgers is old and he's expensive, but I'll be up front here, folks. I would do that in a heartbeat if I were Denver. Now, maybe they could find a way to bring the trade value down by including a player or two in terms of the draft picks going back to Green Bay. But I would do that in a heartbeat. It's Aaron Rodgers. If I'm Denver and I get Rodgers, yeah, my window is maybe 3 or 4 years, 5 at the most. I am one of the best teams in the AFC. Maybe the second best team behind KC, potentially. So what do you guys think? Would you do this particular trade? Would you give up 3 first-round picks and a second-round pick to acquire Aaron Rodgers? Maybe you throw in Drew Lock or send him somewhere else to get some assets back in the short-term/long term. Get your votes in for me right now. Why for yes you would, and for no you would not. Maybe it's this year, maybe it's next year. But at some point, if I'm Denver, I'm going all in on Aaron Rodgers, or maybe even a different young potential franchise quarterback who's on the trade market. Denver has a fantastic roster. I disagree with the Pro Football Talk assessment of, maybe they're not that great. I think the overall roster for Denver is really good. I think what's holding them back from being viewed as a true contender in the AFC is the quarterback position. I'm not sold on either Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater. And I'm not trying to make that as a super negative comment on either player, but Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater, even at the best they've played in their NFL careers, don't hold a candle to how good Aaron Rodgers has been. He was the MVP last year. I mean, shoot, guys, if you got half of this production, namely touchdowns, interceptions, out of Drew Lock, the Denver Broncos are making the playoffs. If you got 24 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, that's a massive improvement for Drew Lock. That's way better than what he's done over his NFL career. Last year, yeah, I think the overall play was a bit better than maybe the touchdown-interception ratio and completion percentage might indicate. But if you're Denver, and even if you got faith in Drew Lock having a massive Josh Allen-type breakout year, which, as a reminder, is a bit of the exception to the general rule there, it's Aaron Rodgers. Like, that guy makes you a Super Bowl contender. So, no disrespect meant to Locke or even Bridgewater, but those guys aren't Aaron Rodgers. Now, if the Broncos do make a big-time move at quarterback, or even when they figure out who they're going to start this year without a trade between the brewing battle between Locke and Bridgewater, we're going to keep you guys updated. If you want more Broncos videos, it's simple. Hit that big red button and subscribe. Oh, by the way, it's free, folks. Let's go to the other quarterback that could be on the move. That is Deshaun Watson. How much interest, if any, do the Denver Broncos have in Deshaun Watson? Now, reports coming out this morning that the Texans, are listening to Deshaun Watson trade offers. And the Broncos have been linked as a potential destination, although there's been the Kareem Jackson saying Deshaun wants to be in Denver, disputed by other media outlets. More on that in a second. And of course, there's this part too. The off-the-field concerns, which are very real around Deshaun Watson. 22 civil lawsuits. I'm sure you guys know exactly all the details on that one. That's still out there. Now, that hasn't moved that far forward in terms of the litigation, and the NFL has not made any action yet. But, I mean, there's a non-zero chance that a team trades for Deshaun Watson, and those civil lawsuits end up being proven true, and Watson gets suspended, and now what do you do if you're Denver or a different NFL team? That's a bit of a red flag and makes it difficult for a trade to actually go down. Now, Albert Breer mentioned 4 teams that make sense for Deshaun Watson. 4 teams that I'm inclined to agree with. The Carolina Panthers, yes, they added Sam Darnold, but it's Deshaun Watson. If the off-the-field stuff is in the clear, a fairly big if, by the way, Carolina would happily be aggressive. Maybe they would send Darnold as part of a unusual double-season trade for Darnold. The Denver Broncos, who I don't think are the number one spot for Watson. I think Deshaun Watson, this was one of the reports early on, it was Miami and New York Jets, right? Jets, of course, draft Zach Wilson, so cross them off the list. Miami's got way more assets between Tua, Xavier Howard, and a ton of draft picks to make that deal go down. And then Philadelphia, there was one Eagles area reporter who said 90% chance Deshaun goes to Philadelphia. Just so we're clear, wildly high. There's never been a 90% trade chance in July. That's pretty damn extreme. Now, we do know the alleged Texans' demands per ESPN's Chris Mortensen. In this case, Denver would get Deshaun Watson, and the Texans apparently want 5 of the following, some combination of high draft picks and starting caliber players. Now, that could be 4 first-round picks or, 3 first-round picks, second-round pick, and a starting player, or some combination, 3 firsts and 2 starters, or 4 firsts and a starter, 3 starters, 2 firsts, something along those lines. Maybe a second would qualify as a high draft pick, but I feel inclined to say probably not. Maybe if it's a 2022 first, a 2020 3 first, and then, a 2022 second and 2 starters, that could get it done. That's around the value. And for Denver, that's a bit problematic because unlike, say, Miami and Philadelphia, the Broncos don't have nearly the level of draft capital that those other teams do. So in the event, it is an if at this point, Watson ends up getting moved. There's a bidding war for his services. Teams feel good about the off-the-field stuff, which they may not. Denver might not. That indicates some question marks for how Denver could acquire him. They would have to include starting caliber players. Now, here are 5 names. I'm not saying all of them, but 5 names that could make some sense. Bradley Chubb, I would rather keep him. But if it's a bidding war to get the quarterback, you would always take in the end, a top 5 quarterback or top 10 quarterback, whatever, if the off-field stuff is cleared, over a top 10, top 5 edge rusher. You'd happily throw in Drew Lock. I don't know if that ends up being the case for Denver, if that makes a lot of sense as a fit there. Lloyd Cushenberry as a center could be an option. You can move Quinn Miners in the starting role. That's a big win, I think, for all parties involved. If he still has value, was not great his first year. They got a ton of corners. You can throw in a Bryce Callahan or probably not a Fuller, but not Surtain. You got options there. I don't want to move Jerry Jeudy, but I could see Houston asking for him in the end. So pick a quarterback for me, folks. Who would you rather go out and trade for if you were the Denver Broncos? Type AR for Aaron Rodgers. He's older, but he's, better. He's a more talented. He's a top 3 quarterback right now versus maybe a top 5 one. But he's also more expensive contract-wise, and he's aging. Deshaun Watson, type in DW. Set yourself up for 10 years of success if the off-field stuff is cleared, which is a bit of an unknown there. So get your votes in, AR or DW. Now, if it were not for the off-the-field concerns, which are very real and very legitimate for Houston, Denver, and all parties involved there, Deshaun Watson would have more trade value than Aaron Rodgers, not because he's a better quarterback right now, although he's not that far behind, but because he's younger. And by the way, Deshaun Watson is eminently affordable for Denver and all teams. His cap hit this year, if traded, it's under $11 million. That's really easy to make it work if you're Denver. Yes, it balloons to $35 million in 2022. Guess what? The cap's going up. And, oh, by the way, all the off-the-field problems are solved. I would lean toward, at least for Denver's purposes, I don't think they acquire either guy this year. But next year, if Rodgers does play for Green Bay, if Drew Lock does not have a breakout year, and if Watson is still in Houston or in limbo or whatever, it starts to make a lot more sense for a splash trade for Denver next offseason.